to better plan for future growth and to manage rising costs to provide water. Last night at the City Council meeting, the City Council voted to call an election on May 2nd, asking the citizens to authorize the sale of the city's water service territory located outside of our city limits in ETJ. We spent significant time and energy on planning for water and for the growing community. Our water utility was established sometime in the early 1900s to serve water to the city and anywhere that the city would be growing into, our ETJ primarily. In 2014, we acquired a failing rural water district, and that made our total service area over 400 square miles. So currently, 40% of our customers live outside of our city limits. And many of those are actually in fast-growing areas of other cities' ETJs. Those are areas that we have little to no control over the development and the rate of development and the density of development as well. And so the proposed sale of water service territory outside of our city limits and our ETJ will actually reduce our long-term water needs by 60%. So it'll reduce the need for us to acquire new water and infrastructure by 60% by 2070. The significant reduction in water demand will not only save hundreds of millions of dollars for the water utility in not only just acquiring new water, but also infrastructure. Because the water utility is owned by the citizens of Georgetown, it will take a vote of the citizens of Georgetown to authorize the city to sell that territory off. Our city manager, David Morgan, will provide more details and information on the action that was taken and what that would look like going forward.
We have a website dedicated to this project and specifically to describing which areas of our water utility we will be selling and then which areas will be transferring to other cities, and then also which areas we're retaining. So the areas that we're retaining in our water utility are the areas within our city limits and also our extraterritorial jurisdiction. It also includes areas to the west outside of our extraterritorial jurisdiction, our ETJ, to 183. And then the city will be asking voters, as our Mayor Pro Tem indicated, for the areas within the ETJs of Florence and Liberty Hill and Salado to be approved for the sale of our portion of our water utility. In addition, we also have been working with Colleen and Gerald, and they will be actually, we'll be in the process of transferring a portion of our water utility into their ETJs based on their interest and their request. And these transfers into Colleen, a portion of Colleen's ETJ and a portion of Gerald's ETJ does not require a vote by state law. So those won't be the portions that'll be up for a city vote on May 2nd. We do have an interactive map on our website so that for anyone interested in where they will be in terms of this sale, they can look that up on our website and identify specifically whether they're included in the areas of the CCN sale or if they're in the areas that are going to be retained by Georgetown Water. Do want to also talk about who we've selected, who the council has selected through our RFP process to be the buyer and potential buyer of a portion of our water utility, and that is National Utility Infrastructure. We went through a competitive process, really looking at a way to find a responsible entity who would be able to do an excellent job managing a new water system that they're acquiring from us, as well as managing good customer service with ratepayers, and also have stability of rates. And we believe strongly that we have found that through NUI. They have experience with managing water utilities, extensive experience. They have the financial resources, and they have plans for acquiring additional water for the area in which they're purchasing. And they will be building infrastructure as well as plans for stabilizing rates. So to help smooth the transition with NUI, we do plan on providing water service on a wholesale basis for up to 10 years to NUI, because we know that it'll take time to acquire additional water resources. We want to make sure that the transition of the sale is really smooth. It also requires, assuming approval by our citizens through the vote in May, it also requires approval through the Public Utility Commission, And so following the election, we will be then filing an application with the Public Utility Commission and anticipate that that process will take to the end of 2027 before we receive approval from them. And then we'll also be working, as I mentioned before, with customers living in the ETJs of Gerald and Killeen. We'll begin working through the transfer of our water territories with those areas over the next several months. So I think what we want to also share is just what does this mean for our citizens in Georgetown and specifically folks within our ETJ area. What we anticipate is that the impact on rates will be lessened over time because, as the Mayor Pro Tem indicated, we will not need to acquire as much water. We are continuing to work on acquiring additional water supply, and we anticipate having news to share on that within the next few months. But that need for additional water is going to be reduced by 60%, which will obviously have an impact on rates for our customers. And then also, what does this mean for people that are living within the area where the CCN will be sold or transferred? The way we've done this process, the way the RFP has worked, and the company that we've selected, we believe there will also be strong long-term management of that utility area with rate stabilization over a long period of time as well. So with that, we're happy to answer questions that you have.
Speaking about the transition, you talked about being seamless. Like from a resident perspective, what can they expect moving forward, or will they really notice anything if it would be a smooth transition?
Well, so I'll respond to that in two different ways. For those that live in Georgetown, in the city limits or in our ETJ, there should not be any difference that they see in terms of who's providing service, how their billing is occurring, and how we're currently managing our water utility. For those that are living in the areas where, well, for example, the area at which we're transferring to, we plan to transfer to Gerald, and the area we plan to transfer to Killeen, there are actually no customers in those areas right now. So there's no customer difference because there are no customers there today. But for customers in the future in those areas, they will be within those water utilities. For those that are going to be in the territory that NUI is, we're working with them to acquire. Over time, what will happen is they will begin doing billing. They will begin managing the water system. So if there are water outages or water issues, meter issues, things of that nature, they will work with this company to perform services. And then they will work with this company as for new development and additional growth. They'll work with NUI to plan for that growth and develop infrastructure.
Just to clarify, you said that you guys would be providing water wholesale for the next 10 years for NUI while they find somewhere else to source water, or what do you mean?
Right. So this sale of the CCN does not include water resources, and so part of our evaluation was looking for a company that had great experience and track record and a plan to acquire additional water, so water resources that they could to be able to supply current customers as well as future customers. We know that type of project takes years to actually occur based on planning and construction and just negotiations. And so part of what we wanted to do is make sure that the effective date of the sale, which could be by the end of 2027, that we knew that wasn't a reasonable time frame in order for them to find additional water. So the 10 years, up to 10 years, we're still in negotiation with them to figure out exactly how that's going to look. But that provides a smooth transition for customers, existing customers that live in the area where the transfer will occur.
So you don't know where they will source the water from once they...
At this time, we don't have a plan that we can share right now, no.
Speaking on the rates, you had mentioned water rates can potentially go down as a result of this purchase. Can you speak a little bit of what that could look like hypothetically?
Yeah, I did not say that water rates would go down. So let me be clear. So let me be clear on that. So we have been working over the last several years on making sure that we enhanced our water lines to water treatment facilities to make sure that we can meet the demands of a fast-growing water utility. So we've seen rate increases as a result of that. We also anticipate to have rate increases related to additional water supply. Right now, we're negotiating with a couple different entities to look at groundwater and bringing groundwater resources into our water utility. That will have a rate impact as well. So the intent of and kind of sharing that rate impact will be less, not that rates will go down, but the rate impact and the rate increases will be less, is because we anticipate that we'll need to acquire 60% less amount of water than we would if we kept the entire water utility territory that we have today.
Our city limits are roughly 60 square miles. Water territory is a little over 400 square miles. Any cost to the water utility, whether it be new water or infrastructure, no matter where it is going to be borne by the ratepayers of the water utility. So if we are able, if citizens say we can sell this through the election, get through the PUC and the whole process, basically we will be back to serving primarily the citizens of Georgetown who own this, who this was created for, and the costs outside of the city limits that we have no say over. Those residents have no say over how the elections and who's governing this body. The costs that are being put on out there for infrastructure and new water that are not in the city limits will not have to be supported by the citizens of Georgetown anymore. It'll be served by their areas versus ours.
And it'll be served by a water utility in UNUI that's solely focused on making sure that they have a good plan and provide adequate water sources and manage and stabilize rates, and will have to go through the Public Utility Commission to do rate making and things of that nature. So there are protections for people that are living in this area, or future residents that will live in this area where NUI will be providing water service.
Well, considering that you guys have had heightened restrictions before, and that you just mentioned that you'd have to invest in millions of dollars worth of infrastructure and water supply, what's going to happen if voters decide that they do not want to have this happen?
Right. If voters don't approve this, then we will continue. We have a plan, or we have a 2070 plan around how many water resources we need to acquire for 2070 for our entire water utility. We've been dedicated to build the water lines and the treatment capacity in order to make sure we have reliable service. I will say that water conservation will continue to be, whether the voters approve this or not, water conservation will continue to be an extremely important part. And frankly, they're a part of every utility across the state of Texas because the least expensive water to gain is the amount of water that you save. And so for us to be more efficient with our water use for everyone within our water utility, and frankly, everyone across the state of Texas, the more efficient, the more that we can be with our water resources and prudent with it, the better it's going to impact rates overall.
Well, water's important to all of our constituents, and so obviously, as David mentioned, we're trying to address supply, but we're also trying to address demand. Now, we do that with conservation amongst our existing customers, but we're also trying to address demand based on we're providing water to a huge area outside of where our city residents have any interest in, if you will, because they're not in the city limits. Many rural areas, and they're growing, and they have no say over what's going on out there, and so trying to bring it back to just the city, and our ETJ, of course, as well.
Well, speaking of that, what kind of conversations were you having with cities outside of the city limits when they were approving this kind of development, and then you guys, figured out that you had to provide water to them? Sure.
Well, some of those areas are not in any city limits, right? So any ETJ. So we do have conversations regionally with all of our area neighboring cities, but it's just the recognition that like the Mayor Pro Tem said, our water utility was created for the benefit of our community, our city limits, and our growth area, and just the recognition that there is a lot of our water territory today is well outside of those bounds, and we think that should be managed by someone else. So we're excited that we believe we went through a competitive RFP process where we believe that NUI is a strong company that has a good track record that will be able to responsibly handle this water utility.
And just speaking on, hypothetically, if the voters do approve moving forward, there will be some bit of savings with the city. How, will those savings be invested in other capital improvement projects? Talking about that.
Sure, there is a purchase provision by NUI. That purchase of the utility, those dollars will first go to pay off debt that we've incurred in the area in which we're selling. So there's a significant water infrastructure, water lines and treatment that we built just specifically for those areas in which that are part of the sale, and we've incurred debt as a result of that. So we will pay off that debt first and foremost. There will be dollars above and beyond that we anticipate will stay in the water utility and actually help help ease rate increases moving forward. So that's our plan with that. But from a bigger picture standpoint, the biggest impact will be having to buy 60% less amount of water than we would if we retain the entire 400+ mile water territory.
Well, any funds that come in from a potential sale must stay in the water utility. It would not, it couldn't be used, say, to build a new street, for example. It has to stay in the water utility, and how it'd be spent at this point obviously has not been discussed at the council level from a budgetary standpoint because the funds aren't here, and it's not been approved by the voters. So it's all hypothetical at this point.
I'm curious what kind of conversations y'all have had with folks who will be in these service areas that are potentially affected, especially given that they're not going to be able to vote in this election. So how are y'all approaching that? What kind of have y'all notified these folks in these areas at this point?
We've done a lot of public communication on this over a period of time. This action that the council took last night is not a first time anyone has heard about this. There's been a lot of reporting about this initiative and our efforts on water planning. We have had in the past, we've had town hall meetings in not just within the city limits, but actually outside of our ETJ in different areas to give updates on our water utility. So, and we'll continue to communicate with people. I think a big important part of working through this process was really walking through some of the criteria we're using on the RFP. The bid amount, the offering amount, a price for buying the water utility was not the primary driver for the decision making around making the selection through the RFP process. The experience of that provider, as well as showing a significant ability to be able to responsibly serve that area were the first and foremost things that were under considerations through the RFP.
And the vote, by the way, is dictated by state law. It's not us choosing who is and who isn't going to vote. State law requires the city to have a vote of the citizens. And so.
In December, I was told that the city of Salado was also interested. Did they end up changing their mind on that?
They do not have a water utility right now. They were planning to form a water utility in order to actually take on their ETJ area that's currently in our water utility. They worked through, did more due diligence to understand what that would entail and what that would take, and decided that not to move forward with that. So they notified us, and we included the Salado area as a part of the CCN's sale, part of the water utility sale.
For some quick clarification with Colleen and Gerald, when is that agreement transfer officially happening?
I don't have a specific timeline on that. Again, those areas do not have any customers, so there are no customer impacts related to those transfer areas. We'll be working with them over the next year or so on the timing of that.
Just one more quick question.
Sure.
Just related to, regardless of what happens with the vote, I know Georgetown has the 2070, plan.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any plans to update that, or what's the timeline as far as because this is just a changing landscape, so I'm curious how y'all tend to approach that in the future.
Sure. We update those about every 3 to 4 years. So we're actually timing over this next year. We'll update our what's called the integrated resource plan. So it's our plan that we're planning out to 2070 for different resources that we need to bring on board and looking at demand. So we'll update that based on just the actions through this water utility sale. And I think it's important to know that that resource plan calls out all the different steps that the city, that we should look at, our water utility should look at to plan for future resources. So it includes goals and targets on water conservation. It also obviously includes acquiring additional water, but it also looks at things like direct puddle reuse as an example. So actually treating wastewater to a level that's standard of drinking water, looking at those options to what's called aquifer storage reservoir, which is taking treated water, putting it in the ground to be able to use and pull out later on. These aren't new things that other cities haven't tried. These are best practices that other cities have tried. And so that integrated resource plan doesn't just look at acquiring groundwater, it looks at multiple options to make sure that we have a good diversity of water resources to be resilient moving forward. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all.